welcome to the Greater Texas Podcast. This is a podcast about building a better Texas. As Texas has fantastic growth, we, on a monthly basis, will interview a leader from the area and talk about what that growth means and how it affects us. I'm Sean Bukowski. I'm the principal of Bukowski Law Firm, where we protect your commercial real estate's assets from dirt to disposition. So now, very lucky to be joined by a fantastic guest here, a commercial real estate broker up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Blaine Cook of Cook Commercial Real Estate. So Blaine, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Sean, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a little while, as you know.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for being here. Let's talk a little bit about you and your background. You have an interesting sort of growing up story. Tell us about that.
Thank you. I'm a native Texan. I grew up in a small ranching town called Kingsville, Texas, home of the King Ranch. Lived there and went to college there. Graduated from Texas A&I University, which is now Texas A&M Kingsville. So A&M merged with A&I about 20 years ago. So depending
what was A&I? What did that stand for?
Arts and Industries.
Gotcha.
And it's a big engineering. Because of the oil and gas business down there and everything. It's more of agriculture and engineering.
Did King Ranch just dominate in that area, I assume?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I mean, everything around Kingsville at one time was owned by the King Ranch. There was, I believe, 600,000 acres just in Texas alone. I could be off a little bit, but it was, if not, is still the biggest ranch geographically in Texas.
Gotcha. And you, being from that area, you started in the oil industry, right?
Yeah, I got my degree and moved to Houston, went to work for an oil and gas company, kind of a sales job where I traveled around trying to get oil and gas people to buy more gas. And I started in Houston. They transferred me a year later to Dallas, fell in love with Dallas. It was 1983 and it was booming. I think they were building this shows you how long ago that was. They were building LBJ Freeway in the Galleria when I moved up here.
Gotcha.
And you know how much it's grown since then.
Yeah, for sure. It's exploded. Yeah.
And just fell in love with Dallas, made a lot of friends. And they kept me here a year, and then they how corporations do, they make some changes, and they decided to transfer me to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That was just a year in Dallas you spent also?
Yeah, I spent a year in Dallas, but at that time they said, okay, we're going to move you to Tulsa and expand the Northwest Arkansas, Oklahoma sales team. And I just kind of got homesick. I lasted about 9 months. Tulsa's a great town, but I really felt drawn back to Texas and to Dallas. So I just kind of said, hey, I'm young enough. I can leave a good job and start over and be fine. So I came back to Dallas, 84, and got my real estate license very quickly and just kind of jumped into commercial real estate. I just not really knowing much about it at the time, just thinking, everything that was happening at the time was like, this sounds like a good career to get into.
Was it a particular interest of yours prior to getting into real estate, or was it just like, this is a good field, do you think?
I had some friends. When I came up here and made some friends that were in the business, and they were doing very well. And I liked, I didn't know anything about real estate growing up. I mean, coming from a small town, you're just not exposed to it. But coming to a big city where there's just massive growth and cranes, and it was like, I was like, my jaw dropped. I mean, I couldn't even, and then I just learned it just by, knocking on doors and setting up meetings and stuff. It's not like I was born into this business. I just learned it.
And you started at a big brokerage firm back then?
It was a small firm. It was called Jaffe Jones and Flint back then. Some guys from Swearingen formed it in the early 80s, and I joined there and stayed there a couple of years and kind of moved on from there.
And then when did you start Cook Commercial Real Estate?
God, I've been a broker. I've had my broker's license since the late 80s. And
Wow.
I've never, it's never been at Cook Commercial Realty until about 3 or 4 years ago. It's just, I've just held somebody would hold my license, or I called myself something else, or I worked as a consultant. I've done a bunch of different things, but I've always had my broker's license. And I decided 4 years ago, I decided I wanted to affiliate with a big network of a big broker network. And I heard about eXp Commercial, and I knew that they were a separate entity from eXp Realty, and decided that that was my best way to be able to get connected with a network of commercial brokers across the country. And so I'm still with eXp Commercial, but it's my company, Cook Commercial Realty.
Gotcha. And has your focus always been all over the DFW area, or?
Yes. You always want to have an area of specialty, and probably from about the early 2012 to 2000, just after COVID, I kind of worked in the Deep Ellum Cedars area, just south of and east of downtown. I had some business contacts down there, and I decided to get to know that area very well. And that's where I did my Pilgrim's Pride land assemblage that I told you about.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about that?
Sure.
Let's talk about the Pilgrim's Pride.
So, about 2014, 15, I came across this, 9-acre plant down there that had been closed. And at one time it was it was a chicken processing plant, Pilgrim's Pride. And they were one of the big chicken, retailers, wholesalers back in the day. And they had shut this plant down. I'm going to say about maybe 2010, maybe 2009. And they went through a bankruptcy and moved their corporation to Pittsburgh. And then they were bought by this big conglomerate by the name of JBS. So it was just kind of sitting there, and I'm going, this property is too close to downtown to not, be of interest to some major developers. So I just started researching, and you go to Pittsburgh, and then found out that the real estate department that I needed to talk to was in I think it was Golden, Colorado, and I developed a relationship with the real estate person there, and this thing took a long time. It took about 3 years, but we found the right developer that really liked the area and had some other holdings in the area, and so there was a lot of hits and misses. As you know, there's a lot of extensions of the contract. There were a lot of discoveries of environmental issues. So I mean, this deal died and came back to life 3 or 4 different times. But we closed it in 2017, and that was highlight of the Cedars and Deep Ellum.
And what's happened to that property since then?
I go by there a couple times a month, and you think of a big plant that's got tanks, and I mean it's now they're tearing down all the tanks, and there's some land for sale, but the master plan for this whole property, it's called So Good, and what they want to do is do some mixed use. They want to do some entertainment. They want to do some multifamily, and they want to do some office. But as you know, with the way the market has slowed down, even for
get anything off the ground right now, right?
Exactly. And I think what they're doing is they're getting ready for the next cycle. They're tearing buildings down. They're grading the ground, and they're getting ready for the next cycle, which you and I both know could be 18 months from now. Who knows?
Right. And we will talk about that for sure. Yeah, that is the big question. Before we talk about that, I want to talk about you. You've also been mentoring some younger brokers. Is that right?
I'm just, I think what I was trying to kind of think of how I wanted to describe what I've been doing lately. And I came up with this catchphrase: networking, connecting, and mentoring. The 3 Ings. And so you and I, that's kind of how we met. We met through the networking, through Provisors. the connecting is also kind of a byproduct of networking because you're just trying to help people that you think need to meet each other for business. And I'm trying to do better at that. And then so the mentoring thing came about because some people found me through LinkedIn, and they just kind of reached out to me and sent me a message. Hey, I really enjoyed reading about you. I'm a student at UTD. I'm in the real estate. They have a real estate department there, and I wanna. Can you help me? And without really knowing how that looks and what that means, basically, I'm coming to the understanding that mentoring is good for me and for the people that I'm mentoring because they can learn from the ground up. Even before, these people are not even graduated from college yet, but they're getting their license. I think about you and me. If we would have, especially me, but if I would have had my real estate license when I was in college, I would have been so far ahead. So these people are nowadays, they seem like they're really interested in their career while they're still in school. So I'm trying to help, and I'm learning too. It's got a really good real estate department, and the people in it are doing these kinds of things with other brokers. So I'm hoping that I can I have these two students that I'm mentoring, and it's new. It's relatively new. I'm putting together some curriculum. I'm going to have them shadow me. I'm going to invite them to some networking events that you and I are familiar with.
Yeah.
And I think how great is it for them that they're starting out in our world like that?
I've talked to law students in the past, and a couple of things I talked to them about is obviously you need to learn how to be a lawyer. Nobody knows how to be a lawyer when you come out of law school. You just know how to think, kind of. But what I always wish somebody would have told me from the beginning is, from day one, learn how to network, because networking is so incredibly important. And so get out there into the world and don't just, obviously you need to be a lawyer and do your legal work. But in the evenings, get out there, man, because that's how you're going to advance your career.
That's how you and I met. And you learned that a long time ago, and so did I. And again, these kids, if they do what these elder statesmen like you and me, if they follow our advice, they're going to be way ahead. Because
For sure.
Another thing I wanted to make you aware of, and you're probably already aware of this, but when you take real estate, when you get your salesman license to get started in real estate, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but all the coursework, 90% of the coursework is oriented to the residential real estate salesman.
Gotcha.
They don't have any, in my opinion, that they should have. That maybe they should have at least some courses that are strictly commercial, so that the people that are trying to figure out their career path can make that decision when they're still taking the class and networking and figuring out who they want to be like.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
And there are some great commercial real estate providers of education, but again, unless I'm mistaken, back when I started, you had no idea what a commercial real estate broker is from the classroom standpoint. Makes
sense. All right. Well, let's shift our focus a little bit and talk about this interesting market out there. It's I told somebody the other day that it's just a lot harder than it was a few years ago, and everything keeps getting pushed and extended. And 5 years ago, if a buyer came to the table and couldn't close, the seller told him to go pound sand, right? Because he had 10 buyers lined up behind him. And now the seller says, well, okay, what do you need, right?
I'll pay attention to you now.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me about what you're seeing in DFW.
Man, that's such a good topic, Sean. You and I have talked about this. The first thing is, as you know, we live in a very good part, a very dynamic, high growth part of the country for the business that we do. Austin, it's just booming like crazy. I'm at the lower end of the food chain from the standpoint of the developers and the end users and the investors. I'm working on the smaller groups. The bigger groups, like the Googles of the world, like the Teslas of the world, they're buying land like crazy. Google's got a brand new, I think 3 million square foot data center in Midlothian.
Okay.
I mean, Samsung has that big campus down in south of Austin.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk, look what he's doing. It's incredible.
It
so
is.
It's we're I don't know that there's a better place to do business like we want to do business. The problem is the guys that have to get their financing, the guys that have to come up with more down payment because the banks are really cutting back and their interest rates are higher than they were, 4 points higher than they were not even 2 years ago. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for the small investor, small user, small developer. But the big guys seems like they're just blowing and going.
Interesting. That makes some sense. I mean, you do see it. Yeah, you do see the acquisition, and we'll talk a little bit about data centers. I think those are probably booming. Also, anything, right?
Oh yeah.
Let's start though with office. Somebody told me recently in Dallas, like the CBD or the uptown area is doing great, and then outside of that, it's a little rougher. Is that kind of your impression, or would you agree with that?
Well, whoever told you that about the CBD, I think they were probably talking more about uptown than the CBD.
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah.
The CBD is struggling with these Class B and C buildings that are antiquated, and they're, a lot of buildings they're converting either all or portion to residential. But some of these buildings, it's cost prohibitive because they're not built to be converted to residential. So people are trying to recommit to a different use, but you're going to see. I mean, your downtown's doing okay. I would say I don't know the latest occupancy, but I'm gonna guess it's around 80% maybe. But the old buildings, the ones, let's say built before 1980, are struggling. The ones that have again that are just not that cannot be imagined into residential, or I guess hotel too. I mean, they're doing a lot of hotels. You could have office, you could have hotel on the bottom, office and multifamily all in one building.
Right.
And I think that we'll continue to see that downtown. I think downtown's not going. I mean, it's not. It used to people go, is downtown going to make it? Are people going to live downtown? And yes, there's probably 30,000 people living downtown Dallas right now, and so it's here to stay. The convention center is expanding, and downtown Dallas is definitely doing much better, and it will continue to as long as our national economy, in my opinion, keeps going well.
I've in the last 6 months or so, I've stayed downtown Dallas probably 3 or 4 times, and I'm always surprised and impressed at how busy it is downtown. And I'm talking about like not just people going to work. I'm talking about people going to restaurants and bars in the downtown area. And it's pretty busy. It's not because I remember, I lived in Dallas in, I guess, 08 to 2010. And, back then you didn't really hang out downtown very much, right? Like, maybe a little bit, but not a ton. And I think there's a lot more of that going on now.
Well, if you think of what happened in 2008 to 2010, nothing was going on back then. It was
right.
It was lean and mean. But, I mean, if you think about Uptown, if you think of the Design District, if you think of Deep Ellum, the Cedars, those areas are so close to downtown that if somebody, I mean, it's becoming like a Chicago, right? I mean, it's the density has grown out of downtown to all. The Cedars is the most undeveloped area of downtown, and you wouldn't believe the land prices that we're seeing down in the Cedars. So your downtown Dallas is going to be doing fine in my opinion,
Gotcha.
for quite a while.
And let's talk a little bit about I keep hearing about how great retail is doing, and not just in Dallas, but all over, really. That seems to be the hot sort of section of commercial real estate. And I think you and I talked about this, and I was talking about a client that was looking for, 1,800 square feet, and you're like, good luck. So just kind of,
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that sector?
There's a lot of different types of retail, and the better location. I mean, this is location, location, location. But if you're in Uptown and you want to be, within walking distance from, 3,000 employees, you're going to pay, $35 a square foot plus triple nets to be there. And that's high for retail. That's very high. But, you can go out, and even if you go north into Legacy or Frisco, and you want to be at Main and Main, you're going to pay a lot of money for the rents. Now, if your business is such that you can't afford that, well, you're going to go to the second tier and third tier markets, and then you're going to get rents in the $20 range and so forth. But if you've got a good, well located retail center or a first floor retail space in a building, in my opinion, you've got a gold mine.
Because you think that'll continue, the retail boom will continue going forward.
Well, it's had since COVID, it had a boom and then it had a bust. But it seems like after COVID, we've kind of had a resurgence of retail. I mean, you still have the Amazon effect, and those kinds of effects, but people still want to shop. People still want to go and
they want to get out of their house a little bit too, right?
There's only so many things you want delivered to your house.
Right. And I was in a conference, I don't know, a few months ago, and they were talking about how a lot of the big online retailers, obviously not Amazon, but a lot of the other ones have realized that having a storefront actually increases your online presence. And so even if they don't make money on that exact retail spot, it's helping boost their online sales in that area.
Well, I'll give you an example. Tesla did that. They're in that $35, $40 square foot space, but it's just because they want people to walk in their showrooms, look in their cars, and drive them around the block. They're certainly not making money on the retail space, but they're selling a lot more cars that way. And I think Amazon, had moved kind of into that retail space and then changed their mind. But they're strong into retail by owning Whole Foods and some other retail. So they but yeah, I think everybody.
Airport stores now too, aren't those Amazon ones? The ones that you don't need there's no employees
that's right.
or whatever.
Self checkout or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Amazon's everywhere.
So let's talk about Amazon. Let's talk about sort of big data and how that's effect on commercial real estate and what you're seeing with, I guess, industrial and data centers in general.
Oh my God! I mean, those are the two sectors that have done very well over the last post-COVID and post-COVID. I mean, industrial has in Austin and Dallas, Fort Worth, Alliance. It's the best. Maybe you could say multifamilies kind of has some of the momentum, but industrial and data centers have by far seen the highest occupancy, the highest development activity. And one thing that we're going to probably touch on a little bit is this whole new AI piece to the puzzle. And that AI is nothing more than creating data by virtue of having Alexa on steroids, right? I mean, literally, you're creating data that's never been, that we've never seen anything like it.
It's super fascinating to me because there's a couple of things. One, AI is moving so fast, and like a year ago, I write a weekly blog. A year ago, I started doing it to help me kind of with the first draft or whatever. It's come so far in a year that it can do a lot more than that now. And now you can do a lot of legal research with it and all of these things. And so it's really, really fascinating how powerful it is. One thing I heard recently, and I'm going to screw up the number, but I'll just give it an example, is that an AI search takes like 10x the amount of energy that a regular Google search does. I mean, I'm not sure there is such thing as a regular Google search anymore, but you get my point. And so that's another issue that I think comes into this, which is, we already have grid problems in Texas, do we? And with all these expanded data centers, how are we going to keep up with this? I don't know the answer to that.
That is such a good point. And they're all kind of interrelated. And here we are with the summer where air conditioners are blowing at full capacity and keeping these data centers cool, and these big warehouses cool. And it every year we go, are we gonna is the grid gonna go down? And those are drivers again of this whole AI. I mean, they're all kind of interrelated, and I think that power is something that is maybe kind of like water. I mean, we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention to what's going on with the power grid.
It's going to be a huge issue because as AI becomes more and more part of our lives, the demand for data is just going to go up and up, right? Like it's not slowing down, right?
No. Yeah.
Where in the DFW area, where is industrial data? Are those mainly in a certain area, or are they kind of all over, or what?
Well, at the end of the day, you obviously have to be close to key power sources, but the way I see it is that there's so much land involved because data centers are not employee intensive, but they're structural intensive in that they hold a lot of servers that they have to keep cool, and so they most of the time when I see a new announcement about a data center, they're off somewhere in Waxahachie or Midlothian to where they can buy the cheap dirt and can build this massive plant, this data center plant. And they're out in Alliance. I mean, I think every suburb, every large suburb around Dallas-Fort Worth has at least one or two data centers in it. And sometimes you wouldn't even know because they don't want them to be identified. So there's no name on the building because they don't want people to sabotage them or whatever. They don't want people to know they're even there.
Have you found any just AI tools that help you in your business going forward? Gotcha.
I'm going to be calling you later about this because I know what you're saying, that you can create a podcast summary without having to literally think about it. And I'm kind of at the point probably where you were about a year ago, where I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what do I really want it to do for me, and then play with it. And see what grows from it. But I can't imagine some of the things that we can do with AI that I don't even know about. I can't even imagine. What are you using?
So we use it for a few things. We use it for research. So we have Westlaw, which is a legal research, but they have AI in Westlaw now too. So we'll use it for that. We will use it for initial drafts of letters and so potentially pleadings. And then I use it to give me both ideas and at least partial drafts of my weekly blog. Nice. And then look, I can give me a draft of a blog about this. You still got to go through and tear it all up. But the first draft is always the hardest, right? So if you can have ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, flush that out for you pretty quickly, the first draft, and then you go in and tear it all up, that saves you quite a bit of time, right? I give my secrets out on that at the weekly blog.
Well, that means people are going to start watching your blog more or reading your blog more. Do you have a blog, a weekly blog, and a podcast weekly, and a YouTube channel?
The podcast isn't weekly. The podcast is, we try to do it monthly, but it's been a little slower lately.
Okay.
And then we do a video that accompanies the blog every week, and that goes on the YouTube channel.
I got a lot of catching up to do. I'm gonna come down to Austin and spend about a week
there
with
you
you.
go. Come on, exactly. Come on over. I want to ask you this because I hadn't spent much time in Fort Worth at all, and I did that a little bit lately. Do you see a difference between the Fort Worth and Dallas markets, or are they all kind of just one? Or
I'm glad you asked me that, Sean, because they're both dynamic, and they're both people talk about Fort Worth like, I mean, I love the fact that you if you go to one city, you're going to see it. You're going to have a different vibe than when you're in the other. Dallas is, to me, it's more of a fast-paced financial hub, dynamic, world class. Fort Worth is got a different vibe, but it's positive. It's more, maybe more laid back, more, I would say even more friendly, more. I think the streets are more walkable. I think there's more history there. People are really proud to live there and do business there. So they're very different, but they're both positive. They're just a little different. And I love, next time you get a chance, you're in town, let's go over there and go to one of our meetings over there. And I just think that you'd love.
I got to get the Billy Bob's too. I haven't been there yet. So
and the stockyards. That's right. And you got to
go to the stockyards.
Have you been to Joe T. Garcia's?
No. What is that? Is that a music venue or?
No. It's the go-to Mexican food restaurant in Fort Worth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got to definitely
You need
do that.
to go there. It's got a great patio. Sure. I haven't been in a while, but it's fantastic.
Awesome.
A plug for Joe T. Garcia's.
There you go. So we'll kind of wrap up with people are the one thing I keep talking about with people is, yes, we're going through this lull, but people are still moving to Texas, right? And companies are still moving to Texas. And so just want to get your overall, while we might have this, whatever we're going to call it, you're still, I assume, bullish on the overall outlook of real estate in Dallas, Fort Worth.
Yes. Again, we live in a state that's central into the United States from a travel standpoint, so we can go 2 hours to the West Coast, 2 hours to the East Coast. We have no state income tax. We have relatively cheap real estate. I mean, I used to say it was cheap, but I can't say that anymore. Of course, you could go maybe out to West Texas somewhere and find something a little cheaper. But
then you're in West Texas. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, then you're in West Texas. But it's kind of one of those good news, bad news, because it's good news for us that live here in the economy and growth, but it's bad news because of the things we were talking about, like the energy, like the more people that move down here, the more power grids, the more data centers, the more this, the more that. So with growth, with a strong economy comes the growing pains of highway problems, highway traffic, construction delays. And so you weigh the good with the bad. But I mean, to do business the way you and I want to do business, this is the place we need to be.
Yeah. I'd rather have people coming here and screwing up our traffic or whatever than not, right? Like, I mean, I'm from Michigan and I have a soft place in my heart for the Metro Detroit area, but it's been dying for a long time now. Hopefully it's starting to slowly come back, but this is a lot better situation than being up there, right?
Yeah. Although I'd like to be there right now.
Yeah, that's true. I'm actually going next week, so
I figured you would. Nice. I figured you were going to go home during the heat of the summer.
Right. Exactly. Well, Blaine, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. It was a great discussion, and I appreciate you talking about the DFW marketplace with us.
Thank you, Sean. Listen, I wanted to let everybody see my Texas shirt. I wore
and it's
just
kind of and it's good colors for the 4th, right? Like
that's right. Sean, as always, I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you soon, in either here or in Austin.
Sounds great. Thanks, Blaine. Thank you very much for listening to the latest episode of the Greater Texas Podcast. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. If you'd like to hear some of the other great conversations we've had on this podcast, please go to bukowskilawfirm.com. And when you're there, if you sign up for our weekly blog email, you'll be able to get updates to all of our latest podcasts. Otherwise, you can go anywhere that you watch or listen to your podcast on a regular basis, and the Greater Texas Podcast is also uploaded there. Thank you very much.